Sounds scary.
Okay.
Also, Rabbi.
Thank you.
He has a business card. It says all right on the
At this point?
Yes. You don't change it.
Okay, we're going to learn all about a shaita today, actually, very quickly, and then we'll move on to the next. The Brisa says, it said in the Mishnah, remember, we're talking about the mitzvahs re'iyah, the mitzvah of being Ola Regal, every yontiv, go up to Yerushalayim, we bring karbanos, we bring a re'iyah, we bring a Chagiga. This is not. It's not an exhaustive list. Meaning, don't think that if you're not falling to this list that you can't be a shaita. There's many ways to become a shaita. The Gemara is going to be discussing these three specifically because these are like on the cusp of maybe yes shota, maybe not shota. There's plenty of things a person can do and act as a shota. The post can speak out. What a shota basically is, it's a person who is acting. In Hebrew, we would say he's a baldimion, like a true, like he's hallucinating. I mean, he literally doesn't live in the world that we live in. Yeah, he's like, he doesn't have a connection to the world. So this does not mean someone who's like autistic. A person who's autistic, on some level, again, it depends on how autistic he is. Again, it's a spectrum. But if a person, there's a boy who came in, he if you'd have a conversation, have a conversation with him. He gets up, he makes an aliyah, he understands the Torah. If you ask him what the mitzvah is, where's Hashem, he points up. That's not a shota. A shota we're talking about is a person, that doesn't mean someone's very depressed, doesn't mean someone who has a lot of anxiety problems. It means a person who literally just doesn't function in the world. He lives in his own world. That's probably the best way to define it. And it's in a certain sense similar to a cheresh. A cheresh who can't hear and can't speak, he's literally living in his own world. When we talk about someone not having das, it means having mitzvahs, the ability to do mitzvahs means having the ability to interact with other people in a functioning way. If you don't have das, you cannot function with other people. You're from mitzvahs. That's the understanding. Katan is a little bit different. I was mentioning before, the Vilna Gaon at 12 years old was patur from mitzvahs. He had more das in his head than 10,000, 80-year-olds, right? So it doesn't just come down to how much intelligence you have. It's a question of, do we view you as someone, halachically, who is considered part of the world? And a katan who's not mature enough, even the Vilna Gaon is, his tefillin, you're more scharf when you put your tefillin on at 13 and he put on when he put on 12. It's a different thing. What we're discussing now in the Gemara is, so for a shota, what are the things that we can use as like an external visual proof that this person, okay, I have to know, is he chayiv in mitzvahs or not? No, he's a shaita, he's patur for mitzvahs. Bryce will say a couple of things. Hayotzi yechidi b'layla, a person who goes out at night. Again, it's talking not about now you walk down Central Avenue. What it means is a person goes out at night, you have people outside, dangerous people are going to hurt whoever it is, you're living in a dangerous neighborhood. The person who walks down to Shalom 3 o'clock in the morning wearing, a white shirt on, whatever, is a shait. Meaning it's a person who just is not living in this world, yeah? The halom bebeis hakvaros, a person sleeps in a cemetery. Again, we're not talking about a person who's doing it for Yerushalayim. A person wants to be ma'orer himself, to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be reminded of the day of death. The Gemara talks about a person who would go and lie in a beis hakvaros in order to be ma'orer himself. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a person who goes into a beis hakvaros, and every time you go to the beis hakvaros, there's a guy hanging out there. What does he do? He lives there. He's sleeping there. He's sort of lost. Areya es kesuso, a person who has no value for financial assets, to the point where if you hand him a shirt, he won't know to put it on. He'll take it, he'll start ripping it, he'll tear it. He doesn't have an appreciation for that. Itmar Ravuna Amar Achu Kulon, and they take out the Girsa here, Basachas, it's until they have all three. Meaning each one of these three things, according to Ravuna, not enough on their own. You need to see all three things. Now, the Basachas they take out, because it's very hard to imagine a person is sleeping at night in a cemetery, walking around and bring his clothes all in one shot. So what it say is all these three things you need to see. If you don't see all these three things, this is still somewhat in the world, and he's chayiv in mitzvahs. Rav Huna says 3. Rabbi Yochanan Amar no. Afilu ba'achas mehen. If you see someone do even one of these things, that's enough of a proof that he is a shota. So heichi dami. The Gemara is trying to understand what is the circumstance that they're even arguing in? And here we're bringing in a term, and this is sort of referring to before. The Gemara is not coming to define from Apple over here, like from ABC, what's a shota? These three things. We know what a shota is. A shota, a person can act as a shota. It means he's acting insane. He's acting in a way where it's very clear he has absolutely no clue what he's doing. So they asked the Gemara, then afilu b'chadanami. You just, any one of these things would be a proof that he's a shota because he's acting like a shota. And if he's not acting like a shota, meaning he's very calmly and serenely tearing his clothes, he says, honey, I'll be back in a little bit, it's outside at night. This is not a shota, right? Meaning if he's acting like a normal person, he's clearly not a shota. Afilu kulu nami lo. And if he does all three, then he's going to be still chayiv in mitzvahs. So what we're talking about over here is a person who is acting in an insane manner. He's acting very haphazard with no sort of control over his actions. And what we're saying over here is that maybe these actions are not necessarily proof that he's a shota. And why? A person who goes and lies down on the Beis HaKvaros, maybe he has a cheshbon. He's nuts. It's a crazy cheshbon, but he's not acting illogically and irrationally. In his mind, he has some crazy reason why he wants to go out. He thinks that his black magic is going to work if he sleeps in the cemetery.
Who's conjuring up the demons is totally normal.
Meaning you and I wouldn't maybe want to have a chasana with him, and maybe we wouldn't want kids to hang out with him. But yeah, he in his own head, he can walk into a base medrash. You can hand him a pair of tefillin. He says, "Oh, tefillin, I get that." And he'll put it on, and he's chayiv mitzvahs, and he's a crazy person in that sense. But crazy is not a shota. There's plenty of crazy people. There's plenty of people sitting in what's Bellevue? Was that still open? I don't even know. There's plenty of people who are in a home that need a lot of help. Who are chayiv mitzvahs. Yeah, they're not shaitas. A real shaita, not a shaita, a real shaita, very hard to find. You're talking about someone who's so completely, it would almost be like, imagine a person who was tripping on acid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of his life. He's literally not in the world. He has no clue, you hand him a $5 bill and he eats it. That's a shaita, yeah, okay. So the Gemara is trying to clarify.
Gene's seen quite a few.
Former cop. He did walk to beat New York, yeah.
So he's job, nice. How long?
Retired a long time. 20 years.
Where? Which precinct?
Brooklyn South, my whole career.
Where? You're Brooklyn South.
Yeah. Well, you know people down
I know a lot of. Yeah, my partner's very close to the whole.
there? Yeah.
Jeff Madge is a friend. He used to run
Sure.
Brooklyn North.
Yeah,
Jeff
chief.
now he's the chief in.
Housing.
Yeah.
He can give you a family tree.
Right. Community affairs now.
Yeah. No, he left
He
community
retired.
affairs. He was in the department.
Okay, yellow.
He get appointed to chief of department. He's now chief of housing.
Oh, okay, right. All right, I heard that.
He's now chief of
My
housing.
friend's getting Corey's chief.
Continues the Gemara. So v'halon bebeis hakvaros, a person in a cemetery, Eimer kadesh tishra alav rachtam hu dekavet. So he has some explanation and rationalization for why he's doing it. V'ayotzi echida b'layla, maybe he's going out in the middle of the night, which is a little insane because you have people out there who are Eimer gandripos achdei. Maybe he has a syndrome. Rashi says either he's very warm, and Rashi says two things. Either has anxiety disease, he has some sort of an anxiety disorder. He needs to walk around to sort of just clear his head, which again sounds insane, incredibly normal to me. Or you're talking about a person who's very, very warm. His body's very hot. His house is very hot. His oven's on. He can't tell his wife and him having flakes where the air conditioning should be. Right. And he needs some fresh air, so he's going out. So it's a completely normal thing that he's doing. I can't just say, oh, look at that guy running around outside. He's a crazy person. Maybe he likes it. He likes a breeze. Yeah, a person who tears clothing. Eimer b'machshavas. So here b'machshavas I find very interesting. B'machshavas, I've heard a million different shatim over here. B'machshavas basically means a person who's very absent-minded, like a Mr. Magoo.
Mr. Magoo.
He's like he walks around, but he's not insane. He's not a shota. There's a famous story. Who would they say it over with?
Daydreamer.
Yeah, a little bit like a daydreamer. Like there was once a story with a certain Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Gurvitz. He was a Gateshead. He was big, a tremendous genius. And by the way, genius and shtus are very, very similar, meaning the way a person behaves when he's a very, very big genius and when he's a complete retard, excuse my language, in a lot of ways are very similar. Like they're very absent-minded. They sort of have no clue what's going on because they're in one world. Now, it happens to be a big genius sometimes if he's lucky enough to find himself in the Olam HaTorah, so we can dress it up and normalize it. But really, they're insane also. It's in a good way. I say better. It's a funny story. One time it was raining like cats and dogs, and it was in a Gateshead, and it rained there all the time. And he was outside the Yismach, and it was raining, and he was coming in, and he's holding what do they call them? The rubber boots, the rubbers that they galoshes. Thank you. He's holding them outside the Beis Medrash as he's walking in. And his Talmidim say, well, "What are you doing? Why are you holding the galoshes? Why aren't you?"
Oh.
He says, "Oh, I was leaving the house this morning, and my wife said, don't forget to take the galoshes." So I took them. Like, I mean, he's like clueless. Like, if you and I would hear that, we would be like, "He's a shaitan." But one of the biggest gedolim lived in London. Like, like that's what it means to be a Baal Machshavos. You're like. One of my rebbeim, Lepiansky, he's also such a genius. Like sometimes he'd walk into yeshiva, like his collar would be like this, his pants would be in a sock. Like I walk out, I look in the mirror, I'm like, my hands are that. That's because I'm not living in a world that he's living in, like Baal Machshava. So he's not a crazy person. He's just that type, yeah. Either way, each one of these three actions on their own could be understood as a normal behavior in some sense, and therefore it's enough that we would say it's not certain that someone observes this, I can assume this person's a shota. So the Gemara is trying to explain. So kivan davdina lekula, but once you do all three, Rav Huna says havalahu kimi, and I'm sorry, I got to turn a couple of pages here. Havalahu kimi she nogach shor chamor vegamal v'nase muad lakol. Right, so let me just give you a little bit of a quick back. So normally the rule is as follows: you're responsible for your animals, even though animals have no das. That's where the connection here is, right? An animal is a shota, really. It's worse than a shota. He never is going to have das, and yet you can't own a shota. So if a shota does damage, that's a different discussion. Baba Kama says if a shota does damage, he's not chayiv. He's an adult, and whatever that means, but he's not chayiv. His actions are not considered actions. But if you have a shar, if you have an animal, and your animal goes and gores, so you have an ox that's an aggressive ox. So the halacha like this: if it gores another animal 3 times, let's say it gores a donkey 3 times. So the halacha is that you're chayiv now to pay nezek shalom, 100% of the damage. Whereas if he only gores it once or twice, you only have to pay half. It's a more complicated discussion, but that's the general rule in Baba Kama. Now, once it hits 3 times, so the general understanding is we understand that your animal is now understood to be an animal that from the very beginning really was one of these animals you should have been watching more, but you're free to allow your animal a certain level of watching, because you can assume most animals are not going to go ahead and act this way. Once your animal acts 3 times this way, we understand that the animal now has exhibited this behavior. You have to watch it. Nowadays it would be like if a person's dog bites once, we might not say anything, but if it bites a second time, that dog's getting put down, right? Because we see that the dog has a certain tendency. Thank you. Right. That's you have to, and honestly, and since it's impossible to watch that animal properly, it's like a walking mazik. Right. It's a problem. So if a shar damages a donkey 3 times, the halacha is for donkeys, it's a mu'ud. If it goes and kills a cat, you're not chayiv nezek shalom, you only chayiv half. What happens if an animal gores 3 times and it gores 3 different species of animals? A donkey, another shar, it hits a camel, whatever it is. Now, what happens if on the 4th time, now it goes and it gores a llama? Are you chayiv to pay nezek shalom, or are you chayiv to pay half? So the halacha is, since the way we established its pattern was the pattern of every time it did a different animal, so it's 3-time goring, and each time a different species, this animal is now considered a goring animal for any species. So even if it hadn't gored this animal at all, you chayiv to pay nezek shalom. So that's the background. What he's saying here is like this. This is a shota, and really it sort of draws comparisons. The shota is like an animal, has no das. He tore his clothes. Not sure. Maybe he's a crazy person. Maybe he's normal. Then he walks around at night like a nut job. Okay, he's still nuts, but maybe not. He's 100% a shota. But now he's going to go ahead. He tears his clothes. He's walking around at night. And what was the third thing? I forgot already. Sleeping in the cemetery. Okay, this guy, you know what? He's nuts for everything. Meaning now all of a sudden you start interpreting everything he does. He's a shaita. Potter from it.
Talking about falling asleep at the oil.
No. That's a different. There could be shaitas over there for different reasons, but no, 100% not. So that's the shita of Rav Huna. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says the following observation about Rav Huna. Amar Rav Papa. Ishmiya leila Rav Huna. If Rav Huna had heard the following, had the Tanya the Brisa says as following. Ezehu shota. Who is a shota? Ezeham abed komash nosamlo. Just says one thing, and it's a brisa. So the brisa is clearly defining that what is a shota? What's the earmark of a shota? The earmark of a shota is anything you hand him, he has no appreciation for its value. You hand him, like I said, a $5 bill. He looks at it, he thinks it's something to draw on. He has no value for assets. He has no value for financial things. Anything you give to him is you might as well just toss it in the garbage. That is called a shota. That's the brisa, and this is a much more overarching definition, a good way to sort of, and again, this does not mean that if you meet someone, well, no, this does mean that. If you meet someone who seems to be acting a little insane, but you say to him, hey, can I borrow $5? He opens up his wallet, takes a $5 bill and hands it to you, he's not a shota. Meaning that already is exhibiting enough appreciation for what's yours and what's mine, and what I have is mine, and what you have is yours, and this is worth this, and that's not worth that. But if you hand him the keys to your car, he takes it, and he drives it into the ocean. If he survives, he's a shayt, he's part of mitzvahs, yeah? Okay. So what Rav Papa is saying is Rav Huna, when he said his opinion that you need all three in order to become a shota, had he seen this brisa, which only mentions one thing, he would have obviously, changed his opinion and said, oh, you know what, I see all you need is one thing, have a haderbe. Now the Gemara is just bothered, ibaylahu. Ki have a haderbe, by making the statement that Rav Papa said, do we mean that Rav Huna would be choser mimikra ksusohu to have a haderbe? Was it only from the one of the three he mentioned, talking about tearing up his clothing? Why would he only limit to changing his opinion about that one? Because ripping your clothing, he held before, wasn't enough to call you a shota. You needed the other two in concert to become a shota. Now we're seeing a brisa that says a person who doesn't appreciate financial assets is a shota. Maybe only that one he changed his mind, or no? Odilma mikulu havi hadar. Maybe once he saw the brisa that was allowing one to be considered a shota for just one act, even all three of the acts, any one of them on their own would have been a shota. Gemara says teku. A very interesting teku. Teku is normally like a question in cheshbon and svara that we just can't answer. Here, it's hard to imagine. Meaning, was Rav Huna choser or was he not choser? Maybe the take was Rav Huna passed, but Papa didn't know. Rav Huna's dead. You can't ask Rav Huna, so we don't know. So in that sense, it's a take. You're not a fan of. Yeah, Kalman's not a fan of take. Okay.
It's unresolved.
Teku is the Gemara's way of establishing that for our purposes we can't answer the question and we have to treat it like a suffix. That's the Gemara's understanding of it in halacha. Now, Teku, they say Teku is an acronym for Tishbi, Yitaretz, Kushas, V'Abayos. Meaning, when Eliyahu Navi comes, Eliyahu Navi, Tishbi, he's going to come and have the ability to clarify all these things. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but either way.
Really said that some crazy came to one of the Gedolim and said, I'm Eliyahu Navi. He said, oh, so what's Pshat over here, Teku over here, Teku over there? What would be the
You should have asked this Teku specifically. This show to talk
what would be the svara to say that instead of saying sleeping in the cemetery, now you could just say he loses, like, what would be the kesher whatsoever?
Well, I'm going to make sure I answer the question you're asking. Are you asking about the chiyuv and mitzvahs?
No, the Gemara here is saying if he's talking about ripping clothing, I understand, because that's comparable. But why would he be choser on the first two things, first two gedarim?
Meaning, do we say from this, because Rav Huna's idea was predicated on the following two thoughts. Thought number one is that one cannot become, or we cannot establish someone as a shota without seeing multiple instances of him acting like a shota. One of the things that he does is that he throws stuff away that has value. So now I have a brisa that says someone who throws something away, that makes him a shota. That seems to be undermining both parts of what Rav Huna said. Meaning Rav Huna said, I need three things. The brisa says you only need one. And Rav Huna said that one of the things you need is throwing something away. So when the brisa is saying that throwing something away makes you a shota, does it only mean of the three potential things that can make you a shota, this is the only one that works on its own? Or does it also say that anything that we have previously thought makes you a shota, that works on? Meaning it's undermining both.
What if he wasn't destroying money, but he was sleeping in the cemetery? What
would
the Gemara say?
So that's the take of the Gemara. The take of
why would that be? Why would it be?
Because from this brisa, because Rav Huna's whole svara was you need three things.
Why would he not be?
Here you see you don't need three things. Rav Huna's whole argument. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan said, I argue any one of these three would work.
Yes, but you could at least say, according to the shita that says you only need one, then for sure, how would you answer that? Meaning, if you hold you need all three, then I understand. If you're holding only one of them out of three, then how would you answer it?
Well, that's the whole point. Rav Papa's statement is Rav Huna would have been choser from his opinion. Was his opinion was I need three. Which part of his opinion was he choser on? The bigger statement that I need three. From this brisa, you see you don't need three because you see only one thing can make a shota. So maybe that means any one of the ones that Rav Huna said would work. Or was he only choser from one of the things he mentioned as being needing three, and maybe that would have been enough, but maybe still the other two. I hear your point, but I'm saying I think it's just a question of, was the chazara of Rav Huna sort of a macro chazara, or a micro chazara within the specific things that he said. But either way, continues the Gemara. Tumtum v'androgonus. So remember, a tumtum is a person who has a flap of skin covering his genitals. We don't know really what's going on. I say his, not to offend. I say his because I don't know what else to say. What's that? They, them, zir. Yeah, exactly, 100%. Okay. The androgynous is a person who we've been just using the word in English of androgynous, but really it's a hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite, or nowadays they call it intersex, which is a technical term, which basically means a person has both organs and maybe even has both internal sort of systems not functioning, by the way. They wouldn't be able to have children, but they have they have gonads, but it's all. Yeah, and you can see them. Meaning, it's not. I mean, you just don't look, but if you see it, that's what you're looking at.
For it or something.
Yeah. Okay. So Taner Rabbanim, Zachar, the pasuk says, and it doesn't actually say Zachar. It says Zechurcha. Calls Zechurcha by Re'iyah. Zachar. That word is Lahoti Es Hanashim. Tells me women are potter, right? Because you need to be male. Zechurcha. The chaf. What is that coming to tell me? That's a little extra. Lahoti Tumtum Androgynous. That collectively knocks out both a Tumtum and an Androgynous. Kol Zechurcha. That's telling me what? L'rabos esaktanim. That ketanim that are male are going to be chayiv. Ask the Gemara, Amar Zocher lahotzi es anashim halam alikra. What do I need a pasuk to tell me women are potter from a mitzvah? Michti. Let's understand over here. Let's investigate. Mitzvah seisha as man grama, but we know that women are potter. They're not obligated in any time-bound mitzvahs, and this is a time-bound mitzvah. 3 times a year you got to come. That's a time. Yeah. The whole mitzvah seisha as man grama nashim b'turais. So I don't need a pasuk to tell me you're potter. There's a general rule: women are potter from all time-bound mitzvahs. Assume that Torah that that's the case. The Gemara says no. Itzrich. I need a pasuk here specifically because had I not had a pasuk, I would have had an external reason. Say again. We're not talking about a cotton. We're talking about nashim here. Oh, you go back into the line. Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. The Gemara is going to ask. Yeah. Sometimes when you have people in the Chabura who are so smart, they already asked the Gemara's question. You know what I mean? So you have to have patience. The Gemara is going to ask that question. So the Gemara says, Itzrich, no, I need a pasuk. Because had I not had a pasuk to tell me that women are potter, I would have said they're chayiv in this unique scenario. And you often find that that's the case. Like by Pesach, we say that they're chayiv to eat matzah. It's Mr. Shezman Grama. I don't need a pasuk to tell me because I would have thought they're, right? You understand? Because, and the reason why they're chayiv is because since they're also, they're off-hand since they're also the miracle. Another reason they give is that once you have the Isser of Chametz, and the Isser of Chametz has a corresponding mitzvah of eating matzah. There's different svaras, but you find that in general that women, although they should be potter from certain mitzvahs, many times they are chayiv because of an external reason, or sometimes that external reason would have been mechayiv them, and therefore I needed a special pasuk to tell me they're potter. And that's this case over here. Salkadai techamina neilif re'iyah mehaka, like we learned yesterday, that there's a gzeira shava between the parsha of re'iyah and parsha of Hakel, when the king would read Motzei Shvius after the first night of Sukkot, first day of Chol Hamoed, he would go into the Azara and read the Torah to the women, to the men, to the children. So you see that over there, and it uses the lashon of Re'iyah there. We have Gzeira Shava to the mitzvah of our Re'iyah, and over there women are chayiv. So I might think so too. Over here, women should be chayiv. And since I would have thought that, I need a special pasuk to tell me that they're not chayiv. So again, the general assumption is they're potter, but I have Gzeira Shava that I would have used to say they're chayiv. So now I need a separate pasuk to come tell me that they're potter. Where it says Mala Hala Nashim Chayovas Avkan Nashim Chayovas Kamash. Fine. Amar Mar. Okay, the next part of the brisa said Zechurcha Lahoti Tumtum Androgynous to tell me that both a Tumtum and an Androgynous are potter. So the Gemara is trying to clarify. Bishlama Androgynous Hitzrich. I understand why a hermaphrodite. I need a pasuk to tell me that he's going to be potter. Why Salkadai Techamina? I would think Hoyel Islay Tzad Zachra, since Lemaisa he does have male organs. They may not function. They may have it alongside with a woman's organs, but at the end of the day, there is some element of maleness to him. I might think that's enough maleness that he's chayiv. I therefore need a pasuk to tell me no, he's not male enough. Yeah. So therefore, that he's not right. And what's the chiddush? The chiddush is very bifnei atzmahu. He's not a male and he's not a female. He's an androgynous. He's a hermaphrodite. That is its own thing. And it's its own thing, and therefore he's not chayiv. But Tumtum's a little bit different. Tumtum, he is either a man or a woman. It's just our eyes are blinded because he has a flap of skin covering it. Sveikahu, he's just, it's a doubt. We can clarify that doubt. But right now he's a Sveikahu. So we'll get to understand. So
Esher Levara.
Yeah, it's a Sveikahu Esher Levara.
Technically,
it's a suffix that you can clarify, theoretically speaking. Meaning it's not a suffix if it's raining or not. You just got to go outside and take a look.
If they look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or like John, right?
You mean like Serena Williams?
I love the sniffers.
Well, Serena Williams.
That's my That's my point.
But like,
Yesh-
That's the
Yeah,
point.
I remember-
She's more manly than most of us here.
but what if
All of
you know,
us.
technology take a test, right?
They don't even have to go that far. If the guy gets surgery, the halacha is very clear that if a person gets surgery, this person, and it's clarified that he's a man. If it's clarified that he's a woman, he's a woman.
Yeah, but you could have a masculine girl and a feminine
Yeah.
man. You can't really.
But like with a beard. And,
So there are other categories. There are other categories.
Go to the old home. These ladies have beards.
There are other categories of what we'll call male and female, and it's something that when I was in yeshiva, this conversation would have lasted 4 seconds and would have been over. Nowadays,
It's the
a hot topic, but yeah, I mean, there's something called an islandess, which is it's a person who looks like and they're androgynous looking. They look like a man. They look like a woman. There's something called Turner syndrome. I mean, there's certain medical syndromes where a person has an XXY or an XXYY chromosome, a certain genetic.
What about that change themselves from a?
That's a shaita. That's the previous sugya.
Say a person changes himself from a man to a woman to a man. Then what are they considered?
They're pater for mitzvahs. They're shaitas.
No, they're biologically still men. That's
Yeah.
why-
Well, yes.
If
but
you're
don't say it in
biological
public.
man, you become, in today's world,
My rule
an
is
operation of a woman becomes a man.
he's not a man. What does it mean? What's a man? What does a man mean?
It's what they're from birth, not from what.
If you stain your skin, are you black?
No, but I know
I mean, you are
Science does interesting things.
You're saying maybe ask a better question. Maybe ask a better question.
No, vote for me. You ain't black.
Yeah.
If you maybe ask a better question. If let's say, and this is not practical so much nowadays, but let's say we have the ability to, let's say, what do you call it? Make, we can, what do they call it? Make fake meat. What's that fake meat called? Genetically modified. So let's say you have eventually they figure out a way to do it with humans, and they somehow make it possible that you can have the chromosomal makeup of a person is like an XY. Okay, I was saying that then you can start having questions. But here you're talking about a person, just because you walk around prancing around.
It's actually a Jewish genetic thing. It's called CAH. I know somebody whose daughter.
CAH, yeah.
You know what? You
I've
heard
heard
of
of
it?
it.
No,
Yeah.
but his question is very good because here the Gemara is not talking about their DNA, it's talking about their physical organs. You see here that the Gemara is
That's true.
basically
That's true.
saying-
But again, part of the
They're
reason why we're saying that is because the way I'm explaining it. The truth is, and hermaphrodite, the best English word we have for it. But an androgynous is basically anyone who has, from our physical reality, what we can see. I mean, in the times of the Gemara, they wouldn't have the ability to look at under a microscope to see exactly or be able to check someone's DNA.
Because you have kids that are born with both that they decide one, they take it off and they raise them as a male or female.
Yeah, so I
Based
think
on where they
so. I
have
think
more
if this androgynous would take off his male, he wouldn't be a woman. You can't make this person all of a sudden become one. A tumtum you can, because a tumtum by definition from the day he was born is either a man or a woman. It's just we don't know. He just never took his pants off. So we never saw.
Right, but so you're saying even if they do surgery?
I mean, I'm not postulating. I'm just to me that's insane. I mean, literally, like they're born beria b'fnei atzma. They are a new creation. They are. You want to ask a good question. So does this mean that they're a beria b'fnei atzma? They're not a man and they're not a woman, or are they half man, half woman? Are they? And you might ask, okay, what's an nafkamina? Okay, so maybe there are nafkaminas. You have to be a male for this halacha. You have to be a woman for that halacha. You have to be a full man, a full woman, like a chatzi eved, chatzi min chorin. Same question. Is that a 50% eved and a 50% free man, or is that a 100% free man on Monday and a 100% free man on slave on Tuesday? Because he works for his master on Monday. That's already like a conceptual question that can have practical nafkaminas. Here, I think it's more just a byproduct of today's.
Tomorrow we talked about that they want to do something.
Exactly. He works for his
Right.
master on Monday, and then he works for himself on Tuesday. So on Tuesday he's free. So on Tuesday he's pater for mitzvahs, chayav mitzvahs. Like that's a discussion. Okay, we'll continue a little bit. So we're trying to figure out. So tumtum, we're saying it's feikahu mi itzrich kral lemeute sveika. So here there's girsa questions. I'm going to read the Gemara the way Rashi understands it. Rashi explains the Gemara to mean a tumtum is a suffix, and since a tumtum is a suffix, who says I need a kra to say a pasuk to your pater? So I just want to clarify it here. Normally, whenever you have a mitzvah as min haTorah, the rule generally is if you have a suffix, we go l'chumra or l'kula. Chumra. Suffix daraisa is l'chumra. So if a person is unsure, did I bench, did I not bench? Benching is min haTorah, you bench. But a regular bracha, which is only mitzvah, we say you're not sure, don't repeat it. Because suffix darabanan l'kula, suffix daraisa l'chumra. So here we're talking about mitzvahs re'iyah. Mitzvahs re'iyah is min haTorah. So what is the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying, I need a pasuk to tell me that a tumtum is pater. Why? if I wouldn't have had the pasuk, I would think you're chayiv. Why would I think you're chayiv? It makes perfect sense why I think you're chayiv. It's a suffix deraisa. The suffix deraisa is l'chumra. The Gemara is asking, what do we need a pasuk for? He should be pater because it's a suffix. What do you mean? Suffix deraisa l'chumra. This is what all the achronim ask on this kasha. And what they say is that that's true if you hold suffix deraisa l'chumra itself is also a concept that's min haTorah.
Oh no. So Shemaita back to
Yeah. So there's a big machlokas rishonim. If I tell you, you come to me, you say, Kevin, I didn't bench. Not sure if I benched. And I say, oh, so the right bench again. And you say to me, okay, fine, I'll do it. But am I doing that because the Torah tells me to do that? Or am I doing it because it's only midrabanan that I have to do that? And you might say, who cares? The rabbis tell it to me to do it. Hashem tells me to do it. Well, the answer is, what if I have a second suffix? But what is that second suffix? It's either a suffix derabanan or a suffix deraisa. If it's a suffix derabanan, now you go lakula. That's actually an explanation for what's called a sveik. I don't want to go nuts here, but when someone has two doubts, you've heard of this, I'm sure, maybe a double doubt, we say a double doubt's lakula. And the logic behind that might be, the Rambam holds this, the first suffix makes you still have to be machmir, because a suffix deraisa is lachumra, but it's only a requirement to go lachumra midrabanan. And therefore, your second suffix is a suffix in a derabanan, which now a suffix derabanan is lakula. That's the famous sheet of the Rambam. So this Gemara would seem to be a raya to that shita. Because what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying, if I have a tumtum, who is the suffix?
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, it's giving me nightmares
Yeah?
because we did this for weeks.
And yeshivas, and he didn't understand
I'm saying a
it.
word.
Great Rebbe.
Yeah.
So I will fix it right now. Suffix deraisa l'chumra. That in and of itself is not commanded by God. That is the rabbi saying, hey, in a scenario of suffix, go l'chumra, because we want to make sure that you took care of it. But so now I'm not eating this piece of meat because it's a suffix deraisa. Am I being mekayim mitzvah derabanan, or am I being mekayim mitzvah deraisa by not eating it? Well, if you hold like the Rambam, you're only being mekayim mitzvah derabanan, meaning min Torah, I can eat it, no problem. Min Torah, you don't have to go l'chumra. That's the opinion of the Rambam. So that would be a perfect riot to the Rambam. What's the Gemara saying? A tumtum is a suffix. Why do I need a pasuk to tell me you're pater? Every suffix is going to be pater. Why? Because suffix deraisa is kula min haTorah. Min haTorah, it's lakula. So this is they bring a riot from this Gemara like the Rambam. Tosfos takes the gears out because other Rishonim learn not like the Rambam. They learn suffix deraisa is min haTorah, meaning every suffix is a suffix deraisa. So really, according to that, every suffix should always be a suffix deraisa, no matter how many sveikas you have. So they have to come on some other reason why a double doubt is mutter. Because really, the second suffix is just a suffix of a deraisa. The third suffix is a suffix of a deraisa. So how does that ever get knocked out? So they have it's not for now, but that's the sheshmaitza. But yeah, so either way, so the Gemara is saying the way Rashi's learning, and the reason why what I'm saying is not so great is because Rashi does not hold like the Rambam. So the way you read the Gemara here is a little bit difficult. So Tosfos takes the gears out over here of the word me, the me. He says that elatumtum sveikahu, itzrich kralam ute sveika, meaning it's the Gemara. It's a little bit. It's a difficult read. It says, "I don't need a pasuk. I'm sorry. I need a pasuk to tell me that I would have needed a pasuk to tell me you're chayiv. And so, what's this pasuk coming to tell me you're pater for? It's talking about someone else who's for sure. Sorry, the other way around. That the pasuk is coming to tell me you're chayiv is referring to the kishapetza mibachutz. We'll get to that in a second. So, but let's keep the Gemara simple. Tumtum sveikum. Tumtum is a suffix. So mi itzrich kral lemute sveika. Do I need a pasuk to tell me you're pater? About you're pater. And why are you pater? Because we'll say what suffix deraisa l'chumra is only a din derabanan, so therefore you're going to be mekel. So the Gemara is bothered. Why do I need a pasuk? You should be pater anyways, similar to like a woman. You're right. No. What we mean to say over here is a regular tumtum is for sure going to be pater because he's a suffix. What about if you have a tumtum who is the penis is covered, but his testicles are not? So you know he's a man, but he doesn't look like a man.
Meaning maybe he also has.
No, not maybe. He's 100% a man. He's definitely a man.
And what's the suffix?
It's not a suffix. He's not. He doesn't. He's not a full zachar. That's the point. Meaning he doesn't have. Meaning when we say tumtum here, we don't mean the normal tumtum where everything's hidden. He's partially hidden, and since he's partially hidden, we know that he's a male, but he is not a full male in the way a male normally looks, and so therefore he's pater. An exclusion that wouldn't really be an exclusion of tumtum. Again, what does the word tumtum
What if
mean?
a guy gets castrated?
That's different.
He gets his thing
What do
taken.
you mean if he's castrated?
He gets his thing taken off, but he still has his base of bachutz.
Yeah.
It's chayav.
No, it's different.
Why is it different? What
Because
is
he
it?
was born, it was out. Yeah.
Guy is not a regular guy.
That's no different than his
You're
question.
saying after he does operation, he was okay.
No, but you see that it's there's having no thing.
Okay, so that actually is a good question, and maybe that's what you're asking. He's pointing out that if after you get the surgery, we see that he's a male, he's chayav in all mitzvahs, which is true. So you're saying,
No, but not-
so you're
here
saying,
you see
what happened?
multiple
What about this guy? What about this
Here
guy?
you're saying there's multiple levels of making a man, not just having any sign of a man, but you need two signs of a man.
Not so much two signs. What we're saying over here is that he's fully this person is high. This person is a 100% male. He's specifically put from Re'iyah because of this pasuk of Zechurcha.
Oh, but he's chayav in all this.
Yeah, he's a regular male, 100%.
Why is he pater from Riyah?
Because it says Zechurcha.
It
says Kol Zechurcha.
What's missing from his maleness?
The visibility of his aver.
So you see that you need two things.
For this halacha specifically. Yeah.
So that means there's something lacking in being male if you don't have both signs.
No, it's lacking in being a male who does Re'iyah.
Yeah, which means you're not a male. If every
Tomato,
man in the
tomato,
world
potato,
goes
potato.
goes to the Zara, except this guy's not a regular man.
Yes, he doesn't go. Well, he's allowed to go. He can't go in the base of
But
English.
he's
But
pater, so he's not
Yeah.
100% man.
Correct.
That's
In this-
yeah.
I'm okay saying that in this context. I mean, for this, if he wants to get married, he can get married, and he's a man, and he can marry a woman. And,
We have 12 minutes left.
it's okay.
Right there.
Shaita. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Amar Abai Kishiv Amar Ma Kol Zechurcha. The last part of the Bryce said LaRabbis Saktanim. That was coming to include Kitanim. Asked the Gemara the rabbi's question. What do you mean? The Mishnah said that a cotton is pater, right? And now you're telling me that this pasuk is coming to be married a cotton that is chayav. V'hatnan chutz michayrashot of a cotton. It said in the Mishnah that a cotton doesn't do re'iyah. Amar Abai like kosher. The Gemara is saying what we learned earlier. Kan v'cotton shehigia lechinuch. Kan v'cotton shelo higia lechinuch. Which is strange. Chinuch is only within the Rabbanan, as the Gemara. Cotton shigel chinuch is the Rabbanan. So what are you telling me? I have a pasuk telling me that the cotton's chayav because of chinuch. It's only with the Rabbanan. You can't have a pasuk. We're just pegging this halacha on a pasuk, but really, the pasuk kol isn't coming to teach me that a cotton. It's just giving me like a hint, a remes that there's such a concept, but really it's only within the Rabbanan. So then, if that's the case, then really the pasuk is extra. So what is the kol coming to tell me? Now, who are acherim? Does anyone know? Acherim is Meir's Rebbe, Acher. We don't ever want to refer to him because of what we did in his life, but so we call him Acher. But he said many great things, and Reb Meir had the ability to the things that he said that were kosher and the things that he said weren't kosher. So whenever you see acherim, just know that we're talking about Elishim and Avuya. Okay. The Tanya, the Brisa says acherim. The habursi, leather makers, mitzaref and choishes are people who make metal, whatever. The habursi, tannering, which is also related to leather making. All of these things are very odoriferously awful. You stink, basically, if you do this.
Picks up the dog.
So the first one is a mekamitz. Mekamitz, literally, he picked up dog feces, because apparently, if you take a look at Rashi, a very interesting Rashi says, on mekamitz, mefarish mesech ksubas hamekamitz biyada tzoas klovim. He picks up dog feces. V'oimer ani zok Rashi, and remember Rashi lived in France, right? He says the takin b'hen oiros. It's in order to make leather shekoirin cordovan, and I think Cal would know this. Do you know what cordovan leather is?
No.
No, you know, you're a fancy shoemaker guy. I'm not into fancy shoes. I thought maybe. Very nice leather shoe. They're very durable leather. They're called Cordovan leather because they're from Cordova, Spain, which is where they sort of initiated this process. They would like make leather in a very durable manner. That's what Rashi is referring to over here, Cordovan. You see already in the times of Rashi that the people in Spain and Cordova were making this, and it's a type of leather now. It's made for uppers, which is like a way when you make shoes. Like you sort of build the uppers of the shoes out of this Cordovan leather. It's very expensive. They will last very long. But either way, the way they would use it, because basically you would take the skin of a horse. That's what this type was. This is not a cow hide. This would be a horse hide, and the horse hide would be used in this durable leather. You can't just take leather, an animal skin, wrap it around your feet, and start walking around. It'll very quickly become disgusting. You have to first break the proteins down in the skin so that it'll be durable, and that's what they would use these feces for. Nowadays we use vegetables and other things, but the point is that it was a very smelly process, obviously. And if you were a professional mekamitz, I imagine when you came home, your wife probably made you scrub in the tub for a couple hours just to be able to sit down at the table. So so what's the Gemara saying? These three people stank to high heaven. So they're pturim min hariyah. Now, where do we know that they're pturim min hariyah? Why? Mishum shenemar kol zechurcha, all of the zechara, meaning everyone has to be able to come up. Kol is coming to teach me, mishiyachal alos in kol zechurcha. It only includes those people who can join in a group. However, yatsu elu, who no one would ever let them join their group, she'enan ru'uyin la'alos in kol zechurcha, because no one would want to have their caravan
Yeah, so why does he
sneaking
want
up.
to pick a Yismach when he could have picked an Acherim? Because if you don't want to do Acherim. The Bryce that quotes the Yismach.
Yeah, the price is only
Because they didn't want to quote the Acherim.
Yeah, I don't know. You say why? I mean, maybe it's not like the Acher. Maybe that Tana didn't hold like the Acher. But Ein Echanami, the pasuk of Kol is coming to teach me this. Nashim avadim she'enim meshuchrarim. So it said in the Mishnah that Nashim are pater, avadim she'enim meshuchrarim are pater. Bishlam Nashim keda Amra, and we said Nashim are going to be pater. Why? Because we said before I need a pasuk because I would have learned that from Hakel, so therefore I have a pasuk telling me that they're pater. Allah avadim inalan. How do I know that avadim are pater? Amar Rav Huna Makra. Pasuk says, "Al pnei ha'adon Hashem." By Re'iyah, it says that you have to go in front of Adon, your master, Hashem. Misha ein lo ela Adon echad. It's only one who has Hashem as his only master. Yatzazeh, this Eved, sheyesh lo Adon acher. He has Hashem, but he also has a master who owns it. Therefore, he's going to be pater. More is bothered. What do I need a pasuk to tell me that such a person's pater? Don't we know? Michti, the following: Kol mitzvah sha'isha chayevas bo Eved chayeva. We know that the rules of an Eved Knani are equal, synonymous with the rules of a woman, and kol mitzvah she'ena isha chayavas ba, and any mitzvah that a woman's not chayav in, ena eved chayav ba. And again, it's very similar because they're both don't have their own time. A woman is responsible for her husband, for her kids, for managing the house. Her time is not her own, so therefore mitzvahs that are time bound are not given to her. So to an eved, his time is not his. So since his time isn't his, we're not mechayiv in mitzvahs that are time bound. And how do we know that the two are connected? The Gemara, we learned it from a Gzeira Shavah. Law, mi'isha. Right? We have the word law showing up in the parsha of Shivcha. We have the word law showing up in the parsha of Isha by getting married. And therefore, we learn that the two things are juxtaposed in this halacha. So therefore, it's a question. What do I need a pasuk to tell me that an Eved's pater? Once you tell me a woman's pater, I know that an Eved's pater. Gemara says, I'm a Ravina. No. Like, and this is the Ravina we mentioned earlier, who held that a Chatzi Eved Chatzi Ben Chayrin is pater, which, by the way, we learned was only in the Mishnah Rishona. But in the Mishnah Achrona, when Beis Hillel came and said, you know what, we're going to force the other partner who owns the Eved to free him, and therefore it says in the Mishnah Hakol Chayavin, in the Maskana, we held that this Chatzi Eved Chatzi Mechon is Chayiv. But either way, at this point, though, we're just talking about Ravina, who is explaining what the Mishnah Rishona held, that he would be pater. The pasuk of is coming to tell me that he's a pater. And Dekanami, he says, if you read the Mishnah, the words in the Mishnah are like this. The words are slaves that are not free. Fred the Gemara, why even have that in the Mishnah? Just say avodim. They're free. Well, and that's an inherent stira. Lisni avodim stama. Just say avodim. You don't have to tell me that they're not free. I know every Eved is not free. Ella lav, it must be she'ena mishachron legamri. It means that they're slaves that are not freed completely, which means who? So shma mina, but that's not the case. Meaning, but that's all again according to the Mishnah Rishona. In the Mishnah Achrona, when Beis Hillel changed to say you freed the slave, then the halacha is that he's chayiv. And they never decided to take out those words in the Mishnah because, like Rashi says, once a Mishnah is nishnis, it's lo zazam imkama. We don't change the language. And mention these people in the Mishnah. These are all people who cannot go up. Tanar Rabbanan regalim, right? Shalosh regalim. Regalim means reglaim. It means feet. You have to have the ability to walk. Prat labale kabin. So the first opinion here we saw earlier is someone who is an amputee. An amputee is pater because he doesn't have legs. Dover acher. This is a different opinion, and this Rashi explains is the opinion of what we saw earlier. Is that they use the word regalim to teach me the following: regalim prat lechiger. He's lame. Lechola. Sick. He can't go. Ulasuma. Who's blind, and we saw earlier that there was an opinion who held that summa be'enoi achas is pater, and that was learned out from a pasuk. Clearly, this opinion doesn't agree with that, because if I need a pasuk to tell me that a full-on blind person is pater, that means I clearly hold the one who's only blind and one eye is chayiv. Because if I hold it one who's blind with one eye is pater, it's a kol shekain. If you have two eyes blind, you don't need a pasuk, right? Ulezakein, and an old person again who can't go on his own. Ulesheino yachol alas baragul, someone who can't go up on his own with his own feet. Mor's bothered. What is that coming to include? Meaning that statement seems to be really either irrelevant or adding something that's not already in the Mishnah. It's coming to tell me people who don't like to go without shoes, people who are very big mufunakim, because we know once you go into the Azar, you got to take off your shoes. They're very delicate, very delicate. These are the types of people who, very delicate people, flowers, right? Yeah. Little girls. The chsiv. It says in the pasuk, "Kisavoy lirois panai," that when we go to the base of Migdash, it says, "Mi bikesh zois mietchem remois chatzeirai." This was by Yechez, talking about when at the time when Hashem wasn't interested in our avoda. And what did it say? It says that when we go to do Aliyah Regel, mi bikesh zos mietchem, who requests this from you, Remos Chatzeirai, to trample in my azara? Meaning to say, trampling implies that you're taking it off. So since you're taking your shoes off, now again, we know Ratzal quotes the pasuk that really it's learned from Shal Na'alecha Me'al Raglecha. But the point is that you see from over here that you need to take your shoes off, and if you're one of those types of people who doesn't like to go barefoot, you're putter. Therefore, that's what a person who it says in the Mishnah, is coming to exclude. Tana. Ha'orel v'hatame. An orel is a person who didn't get a bris. A tame is a person who on some level has some type of tumah. These types of people, paturin min ha're'iyah. They're putter from re'iyah. Now notice, these were not mentioned in the Mishnah. So Bishlam a tame, I understand why a tame is putter from re'iyah. The pasuk says, Uvasa shama, he went there, v'hevesam shama, and he brought a carbon there. And we understand that to mean, Kol sheyeshna b'biyah, whoever is allowed to go inside the azara, yeshna b'hava, is allowed to bring a carbon in there for chayat. However, Kol she'ein b'biyah, like a tame is not allowed to go inside the azara, is eina b'hava, he has no chiyuv to bring a carbon. So therefore, I understand why a tame would be putter from the mitzvah's re'iyah, because he's not allowed to bring a carbon anyways. Ella orel minalan. How do I know that a person who doesn't have a bris is going to be putter from re'iyah? It can't be because he's not allowed to go to the base of Mikdash, because he's allowed to go to the base of Mikdash. So Hamani, who is this? This is Rabbi Akiva. The Marbi la'orel ketame. He holds that an orel and a tame are the same. The Tanya Rabbi Akiva Omer ish. He has a drasha, and what does that drasha teach me? The Rabbo says orel to teach me that an orel is no different than a tame. So even though an orel is allowed to go to the base of Mikdash, he would not be chayav in the mitzvah's re'iyah according to Rabbi Akiva. But Enochanami, all the other Tanaim who argue would hold that an orel is chayav.
There's no way Tumtum who has his testicles but that penis not allowed to do it?
No, nothing to do with that. No, but you're asking a very good question. Why do I need to have a pasuk by a tumtum? Why not just say every tumtum is a suffix orel? We don't know him. If he if we don't know, is he a man or is he a woman? And if he's a man, he clearly hasn't gotten a bris. So isn't every tumtum? Good question. The answer's going to take longer, but yeah, okay. Tami put them in a re'iyah. A tummy is put from re'iyah. Like we just quoted. This is just a brayso of repeating. Kol sheyeshna b'biyah yeshna b'hava, v'kol she'ein b'hava. Fine. Rabbi Yochanan ben Daboy Omer. This is a Gemara we also saw before. Yehuda suma ba'achas me'enov. A person who's blind in only one eye, is he chayav potter? Zok the brayso potter. Why is he potter? Potter ben re'iyah shenei yira. Like we saw earlier, kederach shabal kafbali rose. Just like Hashem Kaviyachal has two eyes, so too you have two eyes. But if you only have one eye, you're going to be ma ba lirois b'shtei einov af lirois b'shtei einov. Okay, Rav Huna kimati lahikra. We're going to see it's just a series of different amoraim who got to a pasuk. Okay, give me 30 seconds. I'll read a couple more lines and then a lot of crying, a lot of little girls. Yeah, Rav Huna kimati lahikra. When he got to the following pasuk, yira baki, he would cry. Amar, he said, Evet sherabi mitzapelo l'roso Hashem, who's waiting for us to show up for the regel. Yisrachek mimenu will eventually say, I don't want you coming to the base of Mikdash anymore. The siv, like the pasuk says, Yisavoyu lirois panai v'bikesh zos mietchem. There, like we saw before, that Hashem, unfortunately, in the times of the Churban, said to us, I don't even want you trampling the base of Mikdash. Rav Huna kimoti lahikra bachi. He got to the following pasuk, he would cry. Pasuk tells us that really it's a time for us to bring karbanos and we should eat there. And yet, Evet sherabi mitzapa le'echol al shulchano. Hashem waits for us to go ahead and bring karbanos and to eat from his karbanos that we bring up on his table, so to speak, the altar. Yisach mimenu will eventually say to us, we don't want you in here anymore, like it says, the siv in the pasuk, lama li rov zivchechem yomer Hashem, that same pasuk that we saw before. He says over here, he says, I don't need your karbanos, again, during the times of the Churban. Rebbe Lazar kimat lahikra bachi, he got very sad when he read the following pasuk. The pasuk says, v'lo yachlu echav la'anos oso, ki nivalom mipanav. This is going by Yosef Atzadik. When his brothers saw that Ani Yosef, his brothers were so shocked when he said it, they could not speak from him. It says, this is what the rebuke of Yosef was to his brothers and how shameful they must have felt. Imagine how terrible that would be. So therefore he cried. He also cried from the following pasuk. The Lama here Gastani La'alos see, right? Shaul, who was facing the Plishtim and was going to lose a war, decided that he was going to go and Ov what do you call Ov Yidoni, which was like a way of necromancers. They would recall the dead neshamas, and so he went to go find Shmuel, who had already passed. I need your help, Shmuel. So he brought Shmuel up, and Shmuel said to him, "What are you doing, waking me up over here, doing the exact thing you spent your whole life trying to fight?" He says, "Shmuel just like Shmuel was scared of din. That we should be scared of din." I guess the Gemara, where do you see that Shmuel was scared of din from here? Shmuel, what's it talking about? The pasuk says, Elohim, sorry, Ra'isi El Olim. He said that the woman who he asked to bring up the neshamas said that I saw two people, Shmuel and I saw someone else. Olim Trey Mashma. Who's the second person? Chad Shmuel ve'idich is the Azul Shmuel ve'asya leMoshe behadeh. He brought Moshe Rabbeinu with him when he brought his neshama up. Amar Leis him Dil Mechas Shalom Ladina Misbaina. Shmuel says maybe I'm nervous. I'm going to go to Din. He says to Moshe, come with me. The Leka Milsa the Kasaf the Be'arai. So there's nothing that you wrote in the Torah. Deloy Kiyamti. Maybe we'll pause here. I feel bad. There's nothing in the Torah that I didn't keep. Just like so. Therefore, he says maybe. So therefore, he said.
He was getting dinner because he wasn't his fault.
Skaya.
They woke him up. They woke him up from the dead.
They woke him up from the dead.
So why is he scared of din?
Well, you see that he's scared of din because he needed Moshe Rabbeinu to come with
I
him.
know, but why is he scared of din? Then what?
You asked me what was Shmuel actually
Yeah.
scared of? I have no clue.
Did that because they come up again, he'll be judged again?
Do a lot
I don't think it
of
has anything to do with it.
a lot of lumber.
Shaul was trying to bring up Shmuel in order to get advice about
I know.
what to do with
What's
the
he scared about? What's Shmuel scared about?
I don't know. He was scared that maybe Chas Shalom he felt that there was some element that he deserved punishment for.
And that's why they're waking me up.
Ah, okay, that could be. I didn't think of that. You think that maybe that's the why he woke up?
I don't know.
No, that's
How did this come into the Gemara? I don't know.
so. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know why the Gemara. No, I'll tell you why. The first one that was mentioned was the pasuk of Yura, which was quoted earlier.
Okay, it's 8:33. So want to start brachas?
Wow. Rabbi, there's no coffee.
Maybe no coffee. No real coffee?
Kalman when Kalman saw that there's no coffee, he started crying.
Yeah, I did.
What do you mean there's no coffee?
Yeah.
There's a box of coffee.
No, but the machine doesn't work. So the instant.
Why the machine doesn't work?
It's not plugged in. It's not enabled.